Greetings to yet another exciting and informative edition of the Mastermind podcast, a show where we give nothing but nuggets to our viewers. And in today's show, we are joined by an amazing woman, a sister to me, and she's just an inspiring lady that we have today. We are privileged to have today, and she's none other than Mrs. A. And Mrs. A is an advocate for mental health, and she's also, like someone who talks to a lot of women and advocates for women's rights and all. And today we have a very interesting and yet, relevant topic that I felt she might be the right person for us to be with today, to share with us this topic today. And today we are going to talk about forgiveness. And we are going to get a lot of life nuggets from Mrs. A, I have no doubt. And Mrs. A, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mr. B. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm doing well and I'm excited about what we'll be discussing today. It's one of the most fundamental things that we need actually to survive. So many things happen in life. And let me not preempt it. But I believe it's really a very important topic, very significant in that it has a lot of impact on the person once it is achieved.
That's very true. And as we get into today's business, can you maybe start by explaining or describing forgiveness, how you understand what forgiveness is in your own way?
Actually, today I really wanted it to be heart to heart, for it to be very relatable, for it to be as basic as possible, just for the comprehension of everyone. Forgiveness is actually, in simple terms, the act of letting go, the act of overcoming the hurt, overcoming the pain. It's actually the choice, it's a personal choice to just, look forward and leave the past behind, regardless of how much hurt, how much pain, whatever it is that you're holding on to, may have caused you. So in simple terms, it's just the act of letting go.
It's the act of letting go, guys. You're hearing it from yourself. And if I may ask, is it mainly about the one, the forgiver or the forgiven?
Actually, I feel it's both ways. But the most important part is forgiveness is actually more personal. The benefits that are derived by forgiving, or the act of forgiveness, are actually more personal, So it helps you that's doing the forgiving the most. The other person that is being forgiven, it's a two-way gangway, because there are certain people who didn't even know that you hold offense, but there are those that know that they have offended you, and for a long time they may have been seeking, a reconciliation, or they may have been seeking for a way to move past whatever had occurred. So once they learn that you have forgiven them, they actually have a lot of release as well to even move forward in their personal lives without having to, hang on to that sort of so and so, we haven't yet mended our relationship because of what happened, and there's still a lot of unforgiveness there. So it's a two-gangway, but most important, it's very beneficial to you that's going to do the forgiving.
Okay, but do we forgive someone who has only asked for forgiveness, or we forgive just in general, like everyone who has wronged us, we have to forgive them, or someone who is willing to change and who is, showing remorse?
There's always that human aspect of wanting to first see remorse before we fit the forgiveness.
Okay.
You know, and most of the times you find that you'll be dwelling on this thing until the person shows remorse. I'll give an example of maybe even in a marriage setting. You find that one spouse will be holding on to that hurt until the other spouse finds or rather shows remorse, like you indicated. But that creates some form of extra tension and unnecessary energy that you'll be carrying around yourself, because you have to keep reminding yourself on a daily basis to say, but they have not yet shown remorse. So you still carry that hurt, you know, in your heart. But it is important to just forgive, you know, for yourself, whether the person has not yet shown remorse or has shown remorse. You need to forgive because it is more beneficial to you. Why do I say so? And forgiveness in itself is a burden. You know, it's either a burden on your mind, it's either a burden in your heart. So there's a lot of unsettlement there. You see what I'm saying? The mature thing, and I believe that that's why even the Word of God says, just forgive. You know, 70 times 70.
Yeah.
Because it is a burden, and forgiveness is a very, very heavy burden. In many cases, you know, the danger of unforgiveness is that it starts to translate itself into other things. If you permit me, I know of cases where, because people held on to so much unforgiveness, they ended up, you know, desiring for the person that hurt them to actually go through worse circumstances.
Yeah.
Others, unfortunately, have even gone to the extent of, you know, visiting strange places, you know, so that the other person can be injured. And all the time it's like you're walking around wanting, you know, the other person to be hurt, and so on and so forth. So that's why, you know, you have to curtail this thing very quickly so that it doesn't translate into something worse, or it actually doesn't even translate into witchcraft. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And from what you are saying, what I'm understanding, but I stand to be corrected as well. I think you are saying forgiveness is a choice, right? But I think there are also feelings and emotions that are involved. Let's say I choose to forgive, right? How do I now make my feelings, you know, also follow, to also align to that? Because I can decide, okay, I'm going to forgive Miss A, she wronged me here, but I'm still hurt inside. Whenever I think of it, I get hurt. How do I align the two?
Okay, that's a very good question. Like you said, it has to do with emotions, right? It has to do with feelings themselves are emotions, maybe thoughts and so on and so forth. But I feel what is also very important is to address your emotions. You have to look at the larger picture. You have to look at the larger scale. By that I mean, sometimes you have to start looking at things from the angle of the people that hurt you. You know?
Okay, can you explain?
I'd like to explain further.
Yeah.
For instance, in the workplace, you know, you find that there will be people that will actually just be offending you, you know, anyhow. For some of those people, actually they'll do it out of ignorance, but you will take it literally. You see what I'm saying? For some of those people, they'll be doing it with certain intentions, and most people actually, when talking about the workplace, they've actually lost out because they failed to control the emotion of unforgiveness. Remember, the moment you are, you know, you hold on to unforgiveness, you become an easy target. You see what I'm saying? Because then they use it against you as a form of weakness. Because you throw a tantrum, or you know, maybe you stop talking to people in the workplace, and as the time comes, maybe for promotion or a certain role that requires you to engage and interact, that very aspect of you, you know, of your responding to the hurt might actually work against you. You know, so you have to be very wise in the sense that you look at things in a larger perspective. So they could be hurting you from a place of ignorance. Others may actually be hurting you from a place of just wanting to crush you. I actually learned this lesson from my husband, and you know, it was a conversation we were having. And he was saying, do you know that certain people are actually so inspired by you, and that inspiration has actually turned into threat to them. And so by all means, they'll try to crush you on the basis that they feel threatened by you. But you don't know this aspect. You see what I'm saying? And then you will just be offended by what they are doing and so on and so forth. Other people will offend you because their cultures are different from yours. You know, maybe that's how they talk to people where they come from. And for you, that's just a no-no. You know, so there'll be maybe cultural clashes. There'll be the issue of where you're a threat to people. You know, you do your best. And I feel for most people, when you find yourself in such a position, you'll be asking yourself, but I didn't do anything wrong. So why am I being targeted? Why am I being offended? And then the hurt comes. And when the hurt comes, it becomes the burden of unforgiveness, because you'll be thinking to yourself, why would they do such a thing to me? So why am I saying we should look at the larger picture? When you look at the larger picture, it gives you the perspective of trying to trace, you know, what would actually cause people to behave in such a way. You know, when you look at the larger picture, it even helps you to be more mature, more empathetic, because some people actually just act from maybe childish, you know, childish trends and so on and so forth. But when you look at the larger picture, you'll be able to tell that, oh, I think this actually came as a result of maybe, you know, this and that, or maybe just a miscommunication, because certain things actually happen because of miscommunication.
Yeah, that's true.
So you find that, oh, it was just a miscommunication. But to get to that, you know, you find that it's difficult for some people, because they'll be holding on to the hurt. But when you look at the larger picture, you look at the larger perspective as an individual, you find that the reasons, you know, for whatever was done to you might just not be sufficient enough. And so it's easy for you to then let go, you know, of that emotion, because you'll be saying to yourself, it's not even necessary. I mean, can you imagine you clash with someone over really nothing, and then you get home and you're stressed and you keep stressing it. But when you look, or rather review, evaluate, you find that was really nothing. And then you find that your feelings begin to align in that, oh, let me just, you know, let me let it go. Yeah.
Wow, this is really profound, guys. I'm sure you're hearing everything for yourselves. But I also have another question for you, Miss A. You know, a lot of people, they say, when you forgive, we forgive and we don't forget. Some say, when you truly forgive, you have to forget. What's your take on that?
My take is, the forgetting part might not really happen, because you see, we're natural beings, right?
Yeah.
And everything that occurs is embedded somewhere in the mind. So there's kind of like a replay. But what is important is that the feeling should not be the same. You see, the hurt shouldn't be the same. Each time you recall the past incident, if the feeling, that strong anger or, you know, resentment comes back, that means that you have not forgiven. Or rather, you haven't forgiven. But for the forgetting part might not really occur to the point where it's zero. In certain instances, yes. But you shouldn't forget for two reasons. Number one, it helps you to become wiser. You don't make the same mistakes. Again.
Yeah.
Number two, it also just helps you be very cautious in the way that you proceed in a lot of other, even maybe in future aspects. So you pick the lessons. For me, I'm a very strong advocate of people learning the lessons from every situation that they were in. Today I have so many examples, but I want to say, for instance, maybe someone who was in a relationship and the person just left them or walked out, instead of you just hanging on, and I like that this is an inspiration and uplifting, instead of you holding on to the fact that the person left, to that anger, that resentment, why not pick the lessons of what you learned through that process? You might not forget that the person left, but there were lessons that you picked from their leaving. So I think it's really truly not forgetting, but then there's the element of acceptance that number one, the person left, number two, there are lessons that need to be picked from whatever that you have gone through. And I feel that's more important in life, picking the lessons, the lessons. Because you find that if you don't pick the lessons and you just focus on the hurt, for instance, the way the person walked out, chances of you replicating that even in your next relationship are much higher. And then you find that begins to damage the person that is being affected by that. You see, because they never really picked the lessons. So they become so affected, they become damaged, and then you have people who have, comments that are general to say, oh, don't trust this, don't trust that, don't, and yet they just needed to pick the lessons from whatever event occurred such that they don't replicate it in the next one.
Okay, that's really amazing, guys. As I told you, we are getting nuggets. Mastermind podcast is all about nuggets, and you can agree with me here that Mrs. A is giving us nuggets. So I also want to get deeper, Mrs. A. I want to come up to portray a situation here. Right. Let's say someone offended me. And like I said, I chose. I want to forgive this person. But it's keep on happening. It's keep on happening. It's not. The person is not stopping. It has become a habit. They are taking advantage. What's the best way? How can we stop this cycle from happening?
Yeah, I hear you on that one to say the person keeps doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But remember, this is an illustration that people really don't like to hear. But the truth is that it takes two to tango, right? So in every scenario, it's two players. At some point in your life, you have to choose not to play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this I found, this is a lesson that I personally had to learn. You find that there will be a repetition of things that occur. And my responses to that thing were almost the same at every given opportunity. And my view would always be, you always do this, you always do that. You see what I'm saying? But then I realized that I'm also a player, because I respond the same way, the same, every time it occurs, I am responding the same way. So I chose to say, I'm not going to participate in the circus. You see, the circus may be going on, but you just choose to say, I will not participate in the circus. So when we say we're not going to participate in the circus, it means we're going to draw a line.
We're going to walk away.
Yeah, we're either going to walk away or we're either going to set boundaries, and limits. Because you have to know that, and the people around you have to know that this is the limit. This is the boundary, It doesn't go, it's this far and no further. You see what I'm saying? Why sometimes certain things continually replicate is because we are also participating. You know, you find that someone provokes you, for instance, maybe at your place of work or anywhere. They just keep doing the thing, and you always respond the same way by becoming irritated. You want to engage, you know, you want to answer back, but at some point you just have to say, I won't be moved anymore by their behavior. You know, I just choose to draw the line and stop responding the same way I used to respond. You find that even in relationships, I believe there are a lot of young people out there.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the guy would just call you, then tomorrow he doesn't call you, and you know, you keep going through the cycle. But the most important thing there to draw the line would just be to stop picking up the call. You know, or yeah, to avoid that.
Stop picking up that call.
To stop picking up the call, to stop tangling with the person. You know, you permit me just to go a little bit deeper. Sometimes we respond because of the needs that we have.
That's true.
Those internal desires, unspoken, that are known only by ourselves. So you find that you keep tangling. For some people, you know, the way they keep, for example, I'll tell you about like road rage. You find that at any given, they're just looking for someone because internally, all they're looking for is an outlet. You see what I'm saying? To maybe externalize their anger and so on and so forth. And that's how it is. You find that there's so many people. Remember when I was talking about looking at the bigger picture? Some people are just looking for an outlet, you know, to remove whatever tension they are feeling. And unfortunately, it lands on you as a victim. So, but personally, to protect yourself, you have to know your limits, and you have to know, you have to create the boundaries, and you protect yourself. Don't join in the circus. You know, it takes a lot, really, to just say, this is a circus and I'm not going to play. I'm not part of the monkeys.
Yeah. So don't be part of the monkeys, guys. You're hearing it yourself. And so right now we are going to take a short break. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, just press the like button, guys, and subscribe button. If you know someone who hasn't subscribed and you feel they can really benefit from discussions and conversations that are made on this podcast, advise them to, to also participate and to subscribe on this channel. So we are taking a short break and we'll be back just now.
See you.
Welcome back, guys, and today we are discussing a very interesting topic, and it's on forgiveness. And those who have been with us on the last session, we are joined by Miss A, and Miss A, she's a mental health advocate, and it's an honor that we have here today, and she's been giving a lot of information to us in the last session, and we are continuing now. And as we proceed, I would also want to ask you another question. I would like to believe that we have all been victims of hate, people have offended us, but at the same time, I feel we have all perpetrated it somehow, maybe unknowingly or knowingly. How do we try to come up with a situation where we live in harmony, where this thing of hatred and thing of offending each other can come to a stop?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mr. B, because so much has happened in life.
Yes.
For so many people, so many different circumstances, so many different situations. occurred. And in those occurrences, you find that they are not self-inflicted per se. Really, it was just because of maybe surrounding and so on and so forth. It leads me to maybe give an example. In our African setting, and I think even in other settings other than the African culture and the race, there were instances where you find that probably the children had to be moved to a different home because the parents were maybe not capable of looking after the children, or they needed a favor, or they had to, maybe the parents passed. I'll give it an example of myself. So when my mother passed, things started to change. And I believe, and that's where somehow, after evaluating my life over a period, I realized that mental health is a big thing, and it has to be dealt with, or rather spoken about, so that people don't suffer in silence. I know I'll have some time to talk about mental health. Also, just coming to a point where you decide to break the cycle. When you want to come out of being the victim of these things, so you decide to just be a better person even to society by becoming more empathetic and ensuring that these things don't replicate, because what we're saying is everything that happens to us is learned behavior, so we don't want to teach that to the other generation. And when we're talking about getting help, and you see someone is affected and you need them to get help, sometimes we may be attending church, going for prayers, but that might in itself not be suffice. So what is important is to always to get a professional counselor if you can, or someone in the church that has knowledge on how to effectively conduct a counseling session, so that the person is truly helped. We may be seeing the matter from one angle, but when the probing starts, when the counselor takes on the session, they might be able to open up, other areas that even the person themselves, or the person that's undergoing the thing, they even realize that whatever they were doing was being influenced from certain behaviors. So that's why it's important to always get the guidance of the counselor.
Yeah, that's really important. And also, I can also maybe want to ask by giving also another scenario whereby, the person who offended, the one who is being forgiven, right, is sincere about it.
Yeah.
They want, this hate and everything also to stop. What role can they play? What role can they play knowing what they did?
Was wrong.
Yeah. What role can they play?
The role that you can play is very simple. I know sometimes the people that you're asking for forgiveness from, might take longer to respond.
Yeah.
But remember when we talked about a circus and everything, really that analogy was just to say you do your part.
Yeah.
So as long as you have done your part genuinely, you have apologized, and you have apologized sincerely. In certain customs, you also take the steps, of doing whatever needs to be done. Then you leave it. That's it. You've done your part.
That's all you can do.
Yes. You don't have to keep following the person, following up, and it then turns into something else.
Yeah.
So give them enough space to heal, to consume, to digest.
So you can only go to a
certain limit. As long as you have done your part, and sincerely expressed your request for forgiveness and admitted that you actually offended, you have done your part.
Yes. So, and now, Miss A, I would like you to give your best shot now to the to the viewers.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, and to just say, like some few words to the people who are listening, to our viewers, on this subject that we are talking about.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Missouri. To the viewers out there, I really want to say something very, very key, very important. You see, carrying around unforgiveness, it's an emotion, right, that you hold on internally. And the dangers of doing that are that it will have an overall impact, number one, on your character. It will alter you in a way that will be adverse. The second thing is that it will have a very bad impact on your health. Some of these health conditions that we talk about, hypertension, headaches, heartache, some of these are actually as a result of all the hurts that has accumulated in your body over a longer period. So this is self-inflicting. And then the third thing is that it has an impact on your overall mental capacity, how you are going to be, processing, thinking, and so on and so forth. So you can imagine that unforgiveness in itself is more hurtful to you than it is to the other person.
Wow.
So what am I saying? I'm saying it is better for you to let go for yourself, so that you can have, better mental health. You're able to process, you're able to feel without having to feel anger or any negative emotion. It's better for your overall health so that you are fit and healthy. Everyone wants to live up to 90. You know what I'm saying? And then also, if you're a person that is spiritual, a person that prays, you want to get to the altar, and be able to speak to God freely without thinking that, I've come to the altar but I'm still carrying baggage. Let it go. Unforgiveness in itself is a huge burden. It's not visibly externally, but internally it's such a huge burden. And whenever anyone is carrying something heavy, it gets to a point when you just have to put it down. And so I believe that should be how it should be with unforgiveness. Just let it go, and get your life back.
You heard it for yourself, guys. Miss A is telling us to just let it go, right? Just let it go. If you did not get anything from what you are saying, the last part, you heard it. Just let it go. So Miss A, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's an honor, it's a privilege to have you on this podcast. I know you have a busy schedule, and I know you, and I know places and platforms that you speak, and you speaking on our podcast is really something that we don't take for granted. So guys, we had Miss A here, and I want to thank you for for everything that you are doing, for all the contribution that you are making, and for just showing your appreciation and the things that we are doing here at Mastermind Podcast. It really means a lot to us and the crew that is behind the scenes. So for now, guys, thank you so much, and Miss A, thank you once again.
Thank you.
And guys, till next time, goodbye.